folks from Mi Gente. This is being hosted by Mi Gente. Give it up for Mi Gente. Give it up for Cumbiaton, the Echoplex, my fellow panelists, Suzy Exposito, Alberto Retana, Ivette Ale-Ferlito, Eunisses Hernandez, and our amazing moderator, Marisa Franco, who's going to come up here in just a little bit. Now, it's my pleasure to kick off today's Plática and to welcome everyone here in District 13. But today we're going to hear from a lot of really amazing panelists across the state of the Latinx politics here in the city of Los Angeles. As we know, the Latino community is very diverse. The districts are very diverse. And not all Latinos, even in the city of Los Angeles, are created equal. But the goal of tonight and this whole tour, and I hear it's now up to 18 cities. Is that right? 18 cities. Give it up for that. Give it a big round of applause. We're going to talk about things on a personal level. Even if you look at, throughout the United States, we know that the way Latinos vote in Arizona is very different, which I've had the honor of being there many years. And also in Florida, I've been there a little bit, and we know that that Latino group looks very, very different, right? I see someone pointing in the crowd saying, like, yes, they are indeed very different. But we know that Latinos make up 20% of the national population, and that is continuing to grow. And we know here in the city of Los Angeles, Latinos make a little bit over 50% of the population. And if you look just in District 13, we're about 60%. But what's oftentimes not talked about is that a lot of folks that are here in the city of Los Angeles are undocumented and they can't vote. And so many times the few Latinos that we do have the vote, and I say few because we're not voting at the levels that I want to, are speaking for, are not able to speak for the whole population. So we're going to get into that a little bit. But we know that Latinos continue to be marginalized and underrepresented in many parts of the country. So speaking personally, now I grew up to, my parents were street vendors and they grinded every day here in the city of Los Angeles. They migrated from Mexico and they were undocumented for many years. Now luckily my parents got into in 1987 when IRCA passed, and they were able to legalize pretty quickly. But we know that even since that moment, we have not had a nationwide, naturalization across the country. We've gotten a little bit of gains. We've gotten DACA a little bit. We've got a little TPS, but we continue to be on the margins of our true political might. But what gives me a lot of hope is a lot of the grassroots work that we Latinos and our people have done across the country. We see here in Los Angeles when we had Prop 187. Who remembers that disgusting law? Who remembers that? Raise your hand. If you don't remember, if you don't know about that law, because you probably weren't born when that happened, look it up. I'm serious. There's a lot of young folks that don't know the history of Prop 187. We know that catapulted Latino power, immigrant power, union power. Those things were merged all together here in the city of Los Angeles, and we've changed a lot of the political landscape, but we continue to have a lot of headwinds that a lot of us are trying to change to this day. We know that in Arizona, SB 1070 was passed in 2010. Who remembers SB 1070? I remember that law very intimately because right around the time of the implementation in Los Angeles, we started seeing a lot of folks with Arizona license plates. I was like, why are we seeing so many Arizona license plates? It's because they were fleeing this right-wing fascist government that was emerging with Jan Brewer and Joe Arpaio, who had been terrorizing our community for many years. But in 2016, I was very lucky to be there for just a short period of time, but we know that work had been done by Marisa Franco and Puente, and I was very lucky to be there the day that we kicked that guy out of office. But that stayed completely, yeah, give it up. Can I curse? Can I curse here? Am I able to curse? We kicked that motherfucker out. That's what we did. Say that again. He said only in Council District 13. Yes, I can curse here. I don't curse in the horseshoe, but I do curse when I'm here with my people. I don't curse when the public can hear me. I said about that. I definitely curse at that horseshoe. So as we know that our people are under attack, we know that our people are being attacked by both political parties. Let's just keep it real. The machine, and I say this every time, Barack Obama and the Democratic Party under his watch deported 3.2 million people in his 8 years. And that, I will never forgive him for that, because he created the machine that eventually Donald Trump took over and even accelerated even more. And what better proof than the executive order that just got passed a few days by Biden, trying to pass the same policies as Donald Trump. And so we know that this is happening all the time. It is the same capitalist system, imperial system that we're fighting every single day. And we do so much to try to unstop it and try to undo it. But here locally, there's so many fights that we need to have. We got to fight for better housing, good jobs, better environmental standards, better transportation. Because even though we don't think of transportation as a working class Latino thing as much as we should, who are the people that are riding the metro? Who are the people that are riding the bus? It's Black and brown folks where the average median income is less than $30,000. These are the folks taking the bus to Santa Monica to clean houses in Brentwood. So we know we cannot separate those issues. They're absolutely vital. And so we're going to talk a lot about that stuff. And really excited. As I mentioned, I have a group of amazing panelists. But right now, I do want to introduce a powerhouse, a champion, someone that's been in the trenches for so many years. Please welcome and give a big round of applause to Marisa Franco, the National Director of Mi Gente.
What's up, everybody? How are we doing? So I'm going to kick this off. I got to do some housekeeping. I got to give you some basic information about what the hell we doing here tonight. So this is Chisme 24. I know y'all know something about Chisme. But do you know about Mi Gente? So first, I got to tell you a little bit about Mi Gente. So Mi Gente is a fighting organization, a political home for Latinx and Chicanx people. We are national, but not national like DC on the Hill, more like in the hood, more like in your backyard. And we were formed para dar la cara de nuestra gente, to have a space to come together, to have each other's back, but to show up in movement correctly. And in that time that we've been in operation, we have put some of our folks in office. We have taken some people out of office. We have prevented deportations. And we've definitely partaken in trying to get racist, greedy, sexist, transphobic motherfuckers to go away. We have walked with you. We have learned with you. And that kind of leads us to this tour. So it's presidential election as a political organization. When I say political, it's about understanding power and trying to have capacity to do the things that we need to do to change the conditions in our community. So when I say political, it's about power and recognizing that structurally our people are kept away from it. And we need to fight for it so that we have the capacity to do what we need to do and what we can do. So it's a presidential election, and I don't know about y'all, but we were feeling a little ambivalent about the situation on the presidential election. So, I think early on as an organizer, we've had a lot of conversations. And compa said, the best thing you can do when you're not sure what to do is go to the people, put your ears to the ground. And so in 2020, we did Chisme 2020, where we talked to the different Democratic candidates. And we were trying to find out the chisme because it was dramatic. They would have these debates and we would be on Twitter reading all the shade and the memes and stuff. And this time, obviously, there's not any memes and it's just kind of Papa Biden there. And it's a little boring. So we thought, actually, let's hit the road. And so Chisme is about broadening the picture beyond Biden versus Trump and being able to learn about what's happening in our communities and being able to celebrate each other in order to see what's at stake. I don't think that in this election, we're going to be scared or shamed into voting. I think we have to be grounded in our purpose, and we have to find the purpose in ourselves. And that's what this tour is about, and that's what brings us to Los Angeles. Saludos, Los Angeles. Love y'all. The city of angels. The city that brought us the Chicano moratorium. The city that brought us the writings and the leadership and the journalism of Ruben Salazar. The city that's Highland Park, Boyle Heights, East LA. The city that brought us bread and roses and the campaign of justice for janitors. The city that brings us lowriders and high fashion. The city that brings us Los Dodgers and the Black Mamba. I love all the murals dedicated to Kobe around the city. It's beautiful. The city that you can imagine that Photoshop that floats around the internet incessantly with Chalino Sanchez and Tupac dabbing. The city where you can imagine that happening. This is that place. This is that place. and homage to y'all, love to y'all for that. And it is a center point for our community, a cultural and political center point. And that is why it's fitting when we have a conversation of what is the state of Latino politics, it is what is the state of our community, multiplied many places over. And we are starting that conversation today. And we are starting it with the conversation about the state of Latino politics rooted in Los Angeles and beyond. And so I'm going to welcome our panelists tonight. And I'm going to take a seat because I have heels on, but also because I want them to come out and join me. So first up, he is the son of Mexican and Costa Rican immigrants. Over the last 2 decades, he has built a community organization empowering South Los Angeles residents to transform their communities, improving education and reimagining public safety through countless campaigns and initiatives like the People First platform, PowerFest, and a training program for community organizers. That organization is Community Coalition, known as COCO, and that person is Alberto Retana. Bienvenidos. Next up, I'm gonna sit down for real this time. Next up, ella es a community organizer, a daughter of Mexican immigrants, and a lifelong District 1 resident, born and raised. I feel like I'm like reading titles like Game of Thrones, like reading all the, yes, I'm gonna do it. Born and raised in Highland Park, she led campaigns, coalitions, and commissions that transformed local and statewide policy before running for city council in 2021. It was an insurgent campaign. We followed it from across the country. Since taking office in December of 2022, she has prioritized a Care First agenda that focuses on investing in community care, workforce development, social services, and harm reduction programs that help make our neighborhood safer and healthier places for all Angelinos. Please join me in welcoming Councilwoman Eunisses Hernandez. Up next, as a queer femme and formerly undocumented person, they have been organizing and leading anti-carceral campaigns in California for nearly a decade. They have helped found and led multiple coalitions, including Justice LA, Reimagine LA, supporting historic victories, including ending LA County's $3.5 billion jail expansion plan in 2019, and the passing of Measure J in 2020, which secured hundreds of millions of county dollars for community investment. They serve as chair of LA County's Gender Responsive Advisory Committee and on the Public Safety Realignment Team. Come through, Ivette Ale-Ferlito. Next up, she is a Cuban Belizean writer and artist based in Los Angeles and has produced award-winning cultural journalism for the LA Times and was previously the founding editor of Latin music for the legendary rock magazine Rolling Stone. She has also written for Vogue, GQ, and Elle magazine. Please welcome Suzy Exposito. And finally, we're gonna call him back up, even though he already introduced himself, but we'll come through. Councilman Hugo Soto-Martinez was born and raised in Los Angeles. His parents immigrated here and worked as street vendors for most of his life to give Hugo and his 5 siblings more opportunities. After his dad became disabled, Hugo started working at a non-union hotel at the age of 16 to help out his family. Shortly before graduating college, he joined his coworkers to form a union, earning better working conditions and respect on the job. Hugo spent the next 16 years at Unite Here, organizing with mostly immigrant women in the hotel industry to win healthcare, higher wages, and anti-harassment protections. After his election to represent District 13 on the LA City Council in November, he took office on December 12th, 2022. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. All right, so we're gonna kick it off. You got your mics, you ready to go? We're gonna go. Okay, first question, just kind of placing ourselves a little bit for all of y'all is, que son de aquí? And like, are you from LA? And if you're not from LA, where are you from? When did you get here? And when you think of that, you know, when you think of either growing up here or when you first came, what was that place and how is that different than what it is now? Whoever wants to start, and we'll hear from each of the panelists.
I'll start. I was born and raised in the city of LA, born and raised in Highland Park. I still live in Highland Park. And, you know, when I think about Highland Park growing up, it was being able to play hide and seek on my entire block. So my favorite place in LA is my block that I grew up in, that I still live on. And remembering being able to run into people's yards because you knew everybody, to hide in there. Those are some of my most cherished memories. Now, you know, the neighborhood's a lot different. The houses on my block are selling for $1.3 million. When back in 1988, you know, the house on the corner sold for $57,000. And so there has been a lot of investment, a lot of development, but that's come with a lot of displacement too. And you look at the census numbers, like thousands of Latinos have been displaced or have left the district because of its unaffordability. So that's how I see it change. But there's still neighbors there that remind me of like playing tag and, you know, what the city was growing up, even if some people didn't like it, but that was home for us, you know?
Yes. I'll jump in here. First of all, Feliz Pride, Jotos. So I am not from here. Yo soy mexicana, chilanga, del DF. And I came here through the Tijuana border, a tourist visa with my mom and my sister, with all of our things in cardboard boxes in December of 1988. And what I remember of the late 80s, early 90s here was a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment. And I didn't speak English, so I didn't quite catch everything, but I felt it. You know, I felt the way that my parents had to navigate migrating to the United States and not speaking English. And I remember Prop 187 that Hugo mentioned earlier. I remember being in elementary school and being scared that I wouldn't be able to go to school because I liked school. Like, I really liked learning. And I remember being followed by the white parents at my school because they wanted to prove that we didn't live in the district, in the school district. And I remember my DARE, the DARE police officer that, y'all remember DARE? You remember that shit? Yeah. That same cop that taught DARE in my class, I saw him arrest my dad. And so my experiences of being in the United States were really isolating, and they were really violent in the 80s and 90s. And I'd like to say that it's changed, but it really hasn't. We haven't seen the type of change that our communities deserve. We're still seeing high rates of incarceration and policing and police violence. But I also feel the resilience of our communities in really beautiful ways. And I'm hopeful that we will continue to carve our space out in the city.
Yeah. I can go.
Go for it.
All right. I was born and raised my first 8 years in Pico Rivera. So I'm not from Los Angeles. I moved from Pico Rivera to La Habra, which is in Orange County. I spent most of my formative years in Orange County. My block, we were the only brown family on the block. I grew up surrounded by white people. I went to school with white people, went to school with white teachers, and was reminded every day that I was not a member of the society. I was not a member of their clan, of their tribe. Poignant memory as a child I think it was in the fifth grade, we had a big auction. And all the kids got to save their points throughout the year. All the kids brought their gifts. I was not I used to mess around a lot in class, so I had very few points. And one of the little white girls came up to me and was like, hey, we have the perfect gift for you. And all of them were laughing. And me and my space of internalized hatred felt, oh my God, like, she likes me. This is fucking great. Like, these white people really want to give me something nice. And I grabbed the box and I remember shaking it. It felt like a puzzle. And I opened it up all excited, and it was dog food. And it said, eat me. And I knew at that moment, for the first time in a real way, that I was dehumanized and not considered a human being. So I spent a good amount of time living in that world until probably my senior year of high school, when I got a little bit more conscious and got a little bit more involved. I graduated. I went to UCLA. That's my entry point into yes, woo, well, yes, and fuck them for fucking up with students and beating them up and fucking over the Palestinian encampment. But I went there. I graduated from UCLA. Well, I actually didn't graduate from UCLA. I left UCLA. The first neighborhood I lived in was in Echo Park. I lived off of Grafton and Echo Park Avenue. This is in 1998. It was a single, and I paid $325 a month. To give you a sense of rent back then. I made $23,000 a year, so it wasn't like a lot of money, but you could pay $325 a month and be all right. I remember going to I went to the Echoplex instead of here by accident. And I walked there and I was like, oh, this is such a important place for this conversation, because when I lived here in 98, it wasn't called the Echoplex. It was called the Nayarit. And it was a paisa bar. And I used to go to the paisa bar to drink beer with the paisas and try to reconnect with my tios, right, that were kicking it at the paisa bar. Both their bad habits, but mostly their good habits. And I felt like I was there the night it gentrified, because there were like white hipsters in the place listening to the paisa music. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And so Echo Park was ground zero for gentrification. Highland Park was on the cusp. Boyle Heights was next. I started working in South Central Community Coalition. And I used to think back then, there's no fucking way that they're going to move down here. There's too many black and brown folks in proximity to each other that the white folks will never move down here to walk their dogs and create their dog parks. But I was naive, because we see what's happening in LA today. So when I think about where we're at today in Los Angeles, 25 years later, reflecting on it, the struggle's real. People are fighting. People are fighting and winning. People are fighting and losing. And we're at the cusp of a really important question about whether or not Los Angeles will continue to have black people in it, or whether we're going to erase them out and push them out like every other major city in the country.
Hi, everyone. I am not from LA. I'm sorry. I actually moved to LA in 2021 when I got a job at the Los Angeles Times as a music reporter. And then 3 years later, I was laid off. And so I think I'm gonna stick around here. I was laid off a few months ago. And now I'm a full-time freelancer, but I moved here from New York City. I had to wait for it. I was like, are they going to boo me? Yeah, so my background is interesting. My dad is a Jersey Cuban. His parents came from Cuba to New York in the 50s before the revolution, just looking for work because things were already pretty depressed in Cuba by that point. My mother immigrated from Belize in the 1980s, I believe in 82. She came to Miami. She and my dad met at the club. They were two club kids. They loved New Wave and The Cure and all that stuff, which is why I am the way that I am. But yeah, so I was born in Jersey City, New Jersey. I grew up in Florida for a while. We moved down to Miami. My family is very conservative Cuban, which yeah, me being queer, being very loud, having fronted a punk band for many years was really, there has to be at least one in every family, you know. But that was, you know, me being involved in like punk and DIY was really radicalizing for me. I went to college in New York City. I was a domestic worker. Even when I was at Rolling Stone, I was walking dogs just to afford the rent. And I was a nanny. I like cleaned houses while I was getting articles placed at different magazines, you know, in the beginning. And I was like, you know, a baby anarchist. I got involved in like Occupy Wall Street, all that fun stuff. Just because I couldn't, I don't know, it's just growing up very early with like any kind of, just from a subculture, like any kind of alternative subculture was what motivated me to try and live those ideals in other ways, as many ways that I possibly could. And, you know, I had lived in New York for 13 years when I was sought out to help cover Latin music at the Los Angeles Times. Because at that point, the LA Times, no one was covering music in Spanish, but writing about it in English. They have the LA Times in Espanol, but they needed somebody to cover what was becoming a super commercially successful like part of the music industry. I won't call Latin music a genre because it's not. It's like an archipelago of genres, but that I think that it brought me here for a reason, and I think that I'm really loving living in LA, and I want to try and make it work the best that I can. And that means, you know, meeting you all, and then eventually meeting some of you. Thank you.
We're lucky to have you. Lucky to have you. Yeah. So I'll riff a little bit off of what Alberto said because it's very similar. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles my entire life, and yeah, give it up for South Central. But at the time, and in particular, I grew up in the historical Black South Central. I grew up on 46th and Central. And if you're familiar with the history of South Central, the Black Panther Party office was on 43rd, I believe. The mosque where the police had the shootout with Malcolm X in the 60s was just a few more blocks down. This is the Dunbar Hotel. This is a historical Black South Central. And so I grew up in a Black and brown neighborhood for the most part. And eventually in high school, we kept traveling south. And my high school ended up being at Jordan, which is in Watts, right next to the Jordan Downs, the Nickerson Gardens, Imperial Courts. Now, going to Watts, I thought South Central was poor and had a poverty and over-policed. Watts is a whole nother level. And so those sort of like my formative years. And eventually, when I joined the union, you know, I sort of got exposed to the activist world, the organizing world. And I got to say, back then, there was not what we have now. It was very small. We had Coco, we had Cheerla, we had a few other groups. But what I think has changed a lot is, number one, the Black diaspora has gone to the Inland Empire. We don't have a large Black community. We see the white community coming in and gentrifying, even in South Central. Which is, I did not believe that would come in this part of the city. And so, but I also seen the movement be a lot more robust, right? I think we have so many different groups organizing now, right? We have a lot of Defensa, which has emerged in the last few years. Like to think that the city of LA would have like an abolitionist group that is like prominent and eventually elect a council, like help elect a council member. Yes. Is unheard of, right? I think my victory, a rank and file union leader who is an open socialist from DSA, right? See my DSA folks here, like to be elected office. So it feels like there's so much activism and happening. However, at the same time, it does feel like the challenges are so much bigger. We see screeching poverty in the city. We see the corporate ownership of housing now is over 70%. We see, you know, these like massive, capitalist things happening. They're just pushing people out. So at the same time, I feel a lot of hope because of the organizing, but I also feel a lot of cynicism and anger, seeing that the issues that we're facing are actually much bigger than we were, many years ago. But the city has changed a lot, but the movement evolves, people evolve, and we continue to grow. And that's always a positive thing. But the city is definitely very, very different from, the south side of the city.
Thank you. And I'm loving, like we went from like cross streets and like landmarks, you in the right conversation, be like, right there on the corner of no sé qué. And also like how we have a panel that's using words like archipelago or whatever that. Thank you. We're doing really well. Okay. I'm gonna switch up the order just because I feel like we kind of got into some of the pressing issues, but I want to get a little closer because some of y'all, I want to dig deeper on a particular piece that some of y'all mentioned, and that is the question of the Black community in the city of Los Angeles, and in particular, the question of, what's often called Black-Brown unity, or the state of how Black and Brown communities are relating. I think that this is a really important conversation because as demographic change happens across this country, if we don't watch that, we're gonna fall into the scarcity politics where in politics, groups are fighting over what little power we're able to generate and build, and then our adversaries are watching us eating popcorn. In a very specific story, became a national story here in Los Angeles last year, where there was political figures, Latino political figures, who spewed anti-Black, anti-Indigenous comments, laying bare some of the broader tensions that are not often talked about that exist between Black and brown communities. And I kind of want to get y'all's comments on what's been the aftermath of that incident and what are the things that we can and should do as Latinx folks to have better unity and solidarity with other communities of color. I'll invite two of y'all to speak to that.
I'll start. I believe that what, in many ways, those horrific words and sentiments and values that were driving policy in the city of Los Angeles did was a huge gift in many ways to many of us who've been struggling to call out anti-Black racism and anti-indigeneity. You could no longer hide behind the veil of Latinidad and not be able to be confronted around anti-Black racism within our community or anti-indigeneity in our community. It also creates the space for us to bring in our intersectional analysis to talk about the other horrific backward thinking that exists in our community. Anti-trans, anti-queer, obviously anti-woman, all the patriarchy in our community. So for me, it was an opportunity to push open the veil and allow for a new group of leadership into the city council to actually come in. One of the things that gives me so much hope is that over the next 11 to 12 years, we have Councilmember Hernandez, Councilmember Soto-Martinez, possibly, we're going to have Councilmember Jurado representing the 14th. Right. That's going to happen. I don't know. Maybe it would have happened without the tapes, but it certainly, I think, created another opening. The only other thing I'll share about the tapes to give room for my comrades here on the stage is unity is, I think, an important concept. As much as people kind of think unity is such a blasé word now, kind of like milquetoast, and now we talk about solidarity, and I actually think unity, because people get it, what unity is, everyday folks. And the thing about unity that's important to me to understand is that in order for unity to happen, unity doesn't exist without difference. Difference is baked into unity. The question is, how do you create unity? Unity is created by folks coming together and working through some of the challenges, not ignoring the conversations. So take the conversation around the economy. For far too long, we were either saying Latinos are coming and taking our jobs, or Black folks are too lazy. When in reality, we know that the 1% has been excluding Black people from the workforce and exploiting brown folks into the workforce. Those are tensions and dynamics that have been able to come out and talk. 1 week that we've been able to talk about in a different way. 1 week after the tapes were leaked, we had a conversation in our People's Hall, and about 200 folks came out, Black and brown folks primarily, API folks were in the room, white folks were in the room, Indigenous folks absolutely in the room representing, and it was a powerful conversation. The Black folks that showed up kind of showed up to be like, all right, what are y'all gonna say? Like, what y'all gonna say? What are y'all gonna do? This is painful. This is yet another example. My family fled the South to come here to deal with this shit. And I was curious to hear what the non-Black Latinx folks were gonna say and what the Indigenous folks were gonna say that are from south of the border. And there were so many comadres in the room that got up and were like, in Spanish, right? Lo siento. Tengo vergüenza de lo que está diciendo estos políticos. Así no estamos, ahora no es como, así no pensamos ahora. Tenemos unos valores diferentes, right? This is embarrassing. I apologize on behalf of my people. This is incredibly a huge problem. And the Black folks in the room then were like, you don't need to apologize for those fuckers. Like, you don't need to apologize for them. That is a completely different group of people that we need to get out. And this is why we're here to talk. And the most powerful moment in that conversation was when a 7-year-old Black girl got up and she told her story and how she felt in her own way, similar to my story, right? That as a 7-year-old, I didn't feel like I belonged. But tonight, I'm reminded that I do belong and that together we can bring about a change. That was the moment that crystallized the evening for everybody. that actually we have to have the tough conversations. We have to have a long-term vision. And we got to fight together because otherwise they're going to eat their popcorn. They're going to benefit from our division. So unity absolutely is possible. Unity and struggle is our approach.
Yeah, I want to, if I can jump in here. So that's a great question. And I take it extremely personal what happened with those tapes because, you know, I'm like Latino and the immigrants' rights movement, building, you know, the union, and it happened in the House of Labor. Those tapes happened in LA County Federation of Labor. But what to me was very obvious from the beginning was that yes, there was a lot of racism. Yes, there was like anti-indigenous sentiment. But what was really happening was they were using these issues to divide people. It didn't matter what it was, because it wasn't that they were uplifting Latinos, because Gil Cedillo was going against Eunisses Hernandez. They were defending, and he had lost. Oh, no, the tapes were before. The tapes were before. The tapes were from, anyways, before you had won. So Gil Cedillo was trying to take down a Latina. That wasn't, the threat wasn't that, it was an abolitionist. That's what the threat was. I was going against Mitch O'Farrell. They were defending Mitch against a labor Latino leader. Like, they were not trying to defend, they were trying to defend their power. At the end of the day, that's what I think they were trying to defend. And they were using the master's tools to divide people and drive wedges between communities. Now, I think it is true. The black and brown unity is the most important thing in the city of Los Angeles. I mean, like, I grew up in South Central, but the issues are so much bigger. Like, we got to bring in, you know, the folks from Filipino town. We got to bring folks from like little Bangladesh, right? We got to bring folks from little Ethiopia. These are working class issues. They were trying to stop a working class movement. And I think that we also have a lot of white allies that like want to fight and want to be part of the struggle. And so when I see these things, I was like, they were doing the work of the capitalist class to continue to divide people. And the reason, you know, I can say that with a lot of confidence is because in my organizing as a hotel worker, like, you know, the cocktail servers are like white, right? The Latinas are the housekeepers. Like, it's multicultural, but it's all the same class. But I do believe that Latino folks and BIPOC folks need to be the ones that lead. But I think, to me, what overshadowed all of this is that it was a class-based attack that they had done. And so I just think we got to continue to build class solidarity on the issues that are affecting working class people in the city.
Thank you.
Can I add something real quick, Marissa?
Dale.
And just to add, like, I don't know if y'all have listened to those tapes, but that was such about not only the capitalist power, but individual power. They're like, how do I protect myself? How do I protect my seat? If they really gave a fuck about Latinos, they would talk about how 60% of renters are Latinos, yet they were trying to take away renter power in that conversation. And so this was never about Latinos. This was never about communities, only about themselves and the money that they've been making, both as council members and on probably in other ways, as we know LA City Council to do.
Tell us that Chisme, girl. Tell us that Chisme.
You know, I say we because we're a part of it, but it's a corrupt ass body in many ways, as we have had several colleagues indicted and gone to be incarcerated. But there's been no accountability either. So you even see in the CD14 race being put against one another, race being used as like, well, this is a Latino district, you got to vote me in because I'm the Latino, while he's running against a Filipina queer woman. And so there's still a lot of work that we have to do so that community members don't fall into that trap again.
Yeah, and I think this issue is really, it was very local to here, and it's connected to what's happening here, but I think this is happening in other cities. And that piece around, like, so much of that cast of political folks, it's representation. It's representation. It's actually, no, it's not about being in the room. It's about what are we going to do? And like 187, you talked about 187. I'm from Arizona, and there is this compare and contrast to Prop 187 and SB 1070. It's a lot of numbers. But in short, they were the most anti-immigrant legislations in their time. And so much was said about California and what happened after that. No, se fue la chingada el Pete Wilson. Who knows where he is? He's over there kicking rocks. And, mira todos los vivotones y vivotonas allá in the state legislature. Like, the political, California's transformed. But like, to me, it was like, yeah, and what's the deportation rate in Los Angeles? What is the state for poor people and working people in this state? Like, maybe a lot of people got elected, but has anything really changed? And like, yes, we can mark progress, but that doesn't mean the job is done. And so it's something that's happened here that I think other places can really learn from. Both is like, what political power for what, right? What are we actually, what's our impact? And what are we willing to risk in order to make that impact? And then also, as the demographics in this country shift, how are we building meaningful alliance? How are we building unity? How are we able to win communities' trust? Because as an elected office, I would imagine you have to win the trust of everybody that lives in your district, even though you have a particular pitch to Latinos. But the point of Latino power isn't just for Latinos. It's actually Latino people being able to effectively lead and have impact in our communities and in this country. Okay, so we're gonna go into what time is it, y'all? I don't have my phone.
8:11.
Okay, listo. Okay, we're gonna do this one. See, we got into some of the issues, right? So we got into some of the issues. Y'all have been talking about it. I'm actually gonna go to some specific questions for some of the panelists, and then I'm actually gonna finish asking Eunisses and Alberto. I kind of want to start getting into solutions. But the first part of this is we're going to get a little deeper on what's happening in the city on some specifics. So Suzy, I'm going to you first. Because you are, just to kind of bring in this piece that's huge in the city of Los Angeles, that's huge for our community, is the question of media and the question of entertainment. And you're at the sort of crossroads of that. So what have been your lessons as a journalist that's covering the entertainment industry? I mean, a burgeoning moment for culture, right? What have been the lessons for you in navigating those industries in this city?
What a time to ask me that question. As I mentioned earlier, I survived a layoff at the LA Times, but thank God, we were unionized. One of the reasons I did choose to work, I chose to leave Rolling Stone to work at the LA Times, largely because it was unionized. And I think that a lot of people are being exploited in media. And we've seen layoffs across the country, but in particular, journalism is really struggling in Los Angeles. The LA Times, the LAist, KCRW, LA Taco are just like some organizations that have had to scale back and take measures, whether it's like buyouts or layoffs, just to weather the economic changes and the sabotage being done by the tech industry. I think that's like a huge part of the problem in media right now in journalism. Google and Meta are threatening to ban journalism from their platforms. You can already see how they sabotage it when you try and do a Google search of anything. News is buried in the search results. The first results you see are ads or like sponsored posts. You might see the occasional Quora or Reddit posts before you see any news outlet. No matter what you're searching, or when you go on Facebook and you post an article on Facebook, you might notice that it doesn't get very many eyes on it. They bury articles. And I think that's really contributed to a lot of misinformation. And at the same time, they're harvesting our data. They're following us, everything that you buy, anything that you talk about, they're able to discover. And it makes me so angry because I'm like, of all the things that people in technology could have done, they did not make anyone's job easier. They just are making people's jobs obsolete. And I think that's really dangerous. So I do want to say that there are two bills being introduced in California. The first one is introduced by Assemblymember Buffy Wicks, who introduced the California Journalism Preservation Act, which would require massive tech companies like Google and Facebook. They control the digital advertising market. So basically this act would require these organizations to pay a usage fee to qualifying news outlets in exchange for profiting from our journalism. So according to this bill, at least 70% of the fees generated by journalism on these tech platforms, they have to be spent on payroll for journalists. So they can't go to like stockholders or shareholders, or they can't go to CEOs who are just sucking the money out of every news outlet across the country. There's also, or at least in California. Also last month, the California State Senator Steve Glazer introduced an additional bill to impose a data mining fee on big tech. And if it goes through, it could fund up to $500 million in local journalism jobs per year. So this includes like a tax credit based on how many journalists are employed. So like any news organization, if the more journalists that they employ, the bigger tax breaks they could get. And I think that this would be an amazing incentive to save journalism in California. I think even like beyond LA, I think about KQED in the Bay Area having to like lay off a bunch of people recently. It is a problem across the country, but it's hitting California pretty hard, and we can't get all of our media from New York City. I would rather that not be the case. And then with entertainment, I think LA, like, you know, so many people come here to work in entertainment, but actually the number of people employed in entertainment in Los Angeles, the number is going down. A large part of that was due to the strikes in Hollywood, or rather, I should say, due to the corporate greed of studios, CEOs of streaming companies. They're making more money off of art, and more artists are being unemployed. And so let me see, it says, I took some notes because I get a little jittery when I'm on a stage. But yeah, so during the 2023 strikes, the Los Angeles region's share of film and TV employment fell to 27% compared to 35% in 2022. That's like a large percentage of people who were not working. And I do think that a lot of working class jobs are in entertainment. I think that it is important to keep in mind that it's not an industry for rich people. I think people get a very small percentage of people are getting wealthy off of entertainment. And so I think that, especially because it is a unionized industry as well, I think it's great that TV and film are unionized. I think the strikes were extremely important, and they were addressing the precarity of creative labor. I think it's really important to be in conversation with the entertainment industry right now.
Thank you. And I want to call up Jorge to get ready, because after this this next comment, we're going to do a quick little game show break. So Jorge, I keep making eyes at you and faces at you and like interpretive dance up here. Get up here. Yvette. I want to go into the question of criminalization, the issue of criminalization. Why is this issue important for Latinos? And you know, why is it, what's the sort of importance of Los Angeles inside of this issue?
Yeah, so LA has this reputation of being a progressive county, right? Like, I'm sure y'all have heard that, especially those outside of LA, right? That we are progressive on a lot of issues. The reality is that while our people are progressive, right? Our voting blocks are progressive, our institutions are really regressive. And which is why Los Angeles is the epicenter of mass incarceration. We are the largest jailing county and the largest jailing state and the largest jailing country in the world. Let's sit with that for a second. We incarcerate over 12,000 people at the moment. Our law enforcement departments kill more people than any other law enforcement departments. Half of the people incarcerated in our jails right now are there pre-trial. And what that means is that they haven't been convicted of anything yet. They've been accused, but they're in jail awaiting their day in court. And most of those people sitting in a jail cell right now simply cannot afford to pay their massive bail amounts. California has one of the highest bail schedules in the country. We are also the largest mental health institution in the country. Our jails are. not a hospital, not treatment centers. LA County jails are the largest mental health institutions in the country. Yeah, it is a shame. It's shameful for Los Angeles County. And 55% of that jail population is Latina. 55. But I want to point out that that data isn't disaggregated by race, right? We're not a monolith, right? We have many races that can encompass Latina, which is why it's also important to point out that 24% of the jail population is Black, while they make up 8% of our general population. These statistics are dire when we know that right now, people are dying at alarming rates inside of the jails. We've lost 13 people this year alone. 13, half of them were not convicted of anything. The jail system is also extracting resources from our communities. And Alberto, Eunisses, and I worked to stop the construction of more jails. And we won in 2019. It's a huge victory. In 2020, we also helped pass Measure J. Shout out to Measure J. For those who voted for Measure J, it secures 10% of our local dollars to community investments in reentry and youth development and housing, all of the things that actually keep us safe and will help drive the jail population down so we could finally close Men's Central Jail. But the challenge is that the county has yet to fully fund Measure J. We're still not seeing those investments. We're still waiting for almost $1 billion of our tax resources to actually go to programming rather than incarceration. The statistics inside of the jails also mirrors the violence that law enforcement is inflicting on our communities in the streets. The vast majority of people that are dying from police violence are Black and brown. Since the year 2000, over 1,000 people have died because of law enforcement violence in our streets. So they're killing our people in the jails. They're killing our people in the streets. They're holding our people in custody because they're too poor to pay bail. They're putting our folks with mental health needs in a jail cell where they're not able to actually recuperate and receive treatment and are only more traumatized. That is the system that we're living in here in Los Angeles County. And I want to uplift the names of Jesse Romero and Andres Guardado. They're two young men that were killed by law enforcement. Jesse Romero presente. Andres Guardado presente. This system is extracting our young people. And it's not only killing them, it's also having reverberating effects on their families, who will have to mourn their loss for the rest of their lives, and their communities that are being cheated of our young people. We are being cheated of our community members. Our young people are being cheated of their parents that are locked up. They're losing out on their families and communities. And I was one of those young people. I got cheated of my dad while he was incarcerated. And so I think it's safe to say that there's very few people in this room that haven't been touched by incarceration or police violence. Very few of us. And that's a sad reality, especially if you're Black and brown in this country. And so part of the work that needs to be done and that La Defensa is doing is to shine a light on all of the actors that are feeding into the system. The folks in the Board of Supervisors and the City Council that are voting for more police dollars. And shout out to our representatives here on the stage who actually voted no for more law enforcement dollars. Every day. We're exposing judges. Just this week, La Defensa released a report with UCLA Law where we documented observations in 2 courtrooms here in LA. And what we found was that judges were not considering people's ability to pay when setting bail, even though that's the law. The Humphrey decision mandates that judges consider someone's ability to pay when they set bail. They are not doing that. Latinos are released on their own recognizance the least out of all of the people that we observed. And they're given the highest bail amounts out of everyone that we observed. Black and brown folks make up 3/4 of all the defendants that we observed. So the data that we're collecting is mirroring what we're seeing in the jails. So we're just proving what we already know, that law enforcement is targeting our communities, that the system is targeting poor people and people with mental health needs, the unhoused. And that's why we need to continue fighting for budgets that reflect our values, right? Budgets that reflect our values in the city council, in the board of supervisors, and at the state. I am sad with what's going on in the state level right now. It is a sad, sad situation in Sacramento. But with folks like Eunisses, like Hugo, folks on the ballot, like Frankie Carrillo, we need more formally incarcerated folks, impacted folks, elected into office so we can actually change things. And I think, Hugo, you are right. Like, folks are scared of abolitionists, and you know what? They should be, because we're here to actually transform the system to give people power. And Eunisses, you're right. That will mean that a lot of individuals don't have the power that they've had anymore. We're dramatically transforming the system, but in the right direction.
Okay, Marissa, real quick. Shout out to Ivette and the work that they've been leading, because right now the jail population is about 12,000. But back in 2019, the population was over 17,000. And so the work that Ivette has done, and Alberto and others, has decreased the population by thousands of people in the jails. And so we can do it, and we're doing it. But more people need to plug in. I just need to upload that because you did that.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to pass it over to Jorge for our short break here.
Yes. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to the Chisme Spin the Wheel game. We have 3 contestants. Pasa el primero. Yes, give it up to them. So you're going to spin the wheel on there. ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿De dónde vienes? Your zodiac sign?
Dani, I'm a Taurus. Y bueno, aquí vivo en City Terrace.
Nice. Yes, go Taurus. I'm a Taurus too. Okay, so spin the wheel and read what it says on there. Dale. Con ganas. Yes, give it up for him. Speed round de preguntas. So I have some questions for you. A ver. Speed round, okay? Best taco spot in LA.
Oh, I like Avenue 26.
First word that comes up when I say Biden.
Ew.
Yes, for real. Trump.
Yuck.
Are you planning to vote?
I'm undocumented.
Okay, you're like, duh. Issues you're most concerned about. What do you care about?
Ooh. So many. The environment.
Yes, thank you so much. Gracias. El que sigue. What's your name? Where you from?
My name is Omar Pichardo. I am a Gemini. What's up, Gemini? I am from the city of Maywood, so puro Southeast LA.
Yes. Okay, chiquito pero picoso. Okay, spin the wheel. Ooh. Tell us why you came tonight.
Because I think it's very important to talk about our issues happening in our Latino community, and I think it's very important to also have this conversation so we can start having them within our own families. You know, it's really, when we talk about racism, you know, it's very important to have these conversations in our own community, because we talk about el pinche tío is fucking racist, and we gotta fucking tell him, you know. So I'm here to talk about, like, you know, because we talk about leadership and we need to step it up with our own families, you know. And so this is real in our community. So I'm here to support it. Pues thank you so much for everybody for doing this.
Yes, give it up for Omar, our next contestant. A ver, dale. Oh, name, where you're from?
I'm Melissa. I'm from the San Fernando Valley. I'm a Cancer. So be nice.
Okay, I had a boyfriend who was a Cancer y no me fue tan bien, pero okay.
The man Cancers.
Okay. Spin the wheel. What is it? Lip sync for your life. DJ play a song. It's Pride season. Yes! Awesome! Give it up for all these folks! Gracias! That's it. Yeah, you got extra left. Give it up for them. A shirt? What about the shirt? Oh, that you all, sorry, I forgot about the prize, huh? I kept saying contestant, y dice, pues, ¿qué chingados me vas a dar? So, go to the merch table and get a free shirt, okay? Thanks, everybody, for playing the Chisme, spin the wheel.
And shout out to Jorge, who has been leading the effort to organize this. Oh, and if you that little QR code, if you felt you like toma la fotito and you do a little survey, you get a free shirt. Hey, there you go. Top, summertime. Show us that belly. Okay, so we're in the stretch run here. So we're gonna kind of, órale. So we're gonna zoom out a little bit, and then in the closing, we'll be able to speak to any last shout outs you want to do around particular issues. So, just real quick, speed round. Word that comes to mind or a sentence that describes or encapsulates your feeling about the presidential election this year. And we'll start here to my left.
Struggle.
We can't go back to family separations happening in our communities.
Free Palestine.
Sorry, what was just one word when you think about
One word or one sentence, or even a groan that might work too.
Gerontocracy.
Say once again, we gotta come in and fucking save this country.
So, as I said at the beginning, this, us doing this tour was really emerged from this feeling of like, ¿qué hacemos? Like, we don't have great options, and it feels like political negligence to completely sit on the sidelines. And so that's why this conversation is so fruitful, so helpful, because I think that we need to find multiple points of purpose for ourselves in this election season. So, we're in California. Last time I checked, it's not a swing state. I wish that, you have this electoral college, this madre. It's the only, the only thing you don't go into debt for to attend this pinchy electoral college, quien sabe. But things are not at stake here in the same way at the federal level, at the presidential ticket, top of the ticket level. So I want to invite two of y'all, just grappling with that. What's happening locally, what the politics of the presidential election this year, and the fact that California plays the role it does in that map, in that electoral map. So I'm sure, how many of y'all have heard like folks say, F it, like let Trump win, no me importa? How many of you have heard someone say that, or you feel that way? So to two or three of y'all that want to respond, when people say that, just, no quiero votar, I don't want to participate, que gane el Trump. What's your response?
When I was running for office, I was knocking a lot of doors in MacArthur Park, Pico Union, and Westlake, and those are the most Latino neighborhoods in CD1 and the densest neighborhoods in the entire city and county of Los Angeles. While I was door knocking, I met young people whose parents were deported because ICE came to their apartment in MacArthur Park and took their father, for example. And that was during the Trump era. And when I think about what was happening in the Trump era and what we get to do now is that literally families were getting separated, and people were having to train people in how to stop a nice van from taking somebody. And now, that is still happening in certain places, but the fact is that we can organize in a little bit of a safer environment to change policy and not have to stop these vans from, taking folks. And I think that's the difference of it's literally like life and death, family separation of what it was like with Trump. And I know that, it's been some time since we had him, but the anxiety that was at that level, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want our neighborhoods and our communities to have to go back to that anxiety of like fearing even leaving their apartment to go do an errand, go get groceries. And so this vote feels like harm reduction. It's not perfect, but at least I don't grapple with the fear of like ICE vans coming into MacArthur Park. Like we cannot go back to that. So I think what's at stake here is literally keeping our families together. Because Trump has said he will be a dictator. And like we've seen, the laws take some time to catch up to him and he'll do whatever the fuck he wants. And that terrifies me.
Trump is a fascist. There's no way around it. Part of what I think about is our own community and what role we play and what power we give. To me, this is a function of power, not about personalities. And if 40% of our community continues to vote Republican, 43% are saying, and you can fucking put the poll up and criticize it all you want, but if 40% of the Latina community is supporting Trump, I kind of want to have a conversation about how do we move values in our community. If you're one person on the far left saying, fuck Trump, I'm not going to vote for him, and you're in Phoenix, right, where the battle lines are very different, what are we doing in our community to change how we vote? Because black folks, 80% of the time vote the right fucking way, but we don't. So we can point the fingers at Biden all we want. We can point the fingers at capitalism all we want. I do all day, every day. But at some point, organizing is about organizing our people to vote a different way. And until we do the hard work of doing that, I think it's a mistake. I think in California, if you want to vote third party, go for it. But you better volunteer your fucking ass off in another state to get Trump out. And no third party candidate is going to get Trump out. I'm sorry. So get off the high horse and volunteer. Vote with your conscience. Be principled when you vote in California. Call out Biden and all the shit he's done. But it's irresponsible to allow a fascist back into office.
Yeah, I mean, I want to sort of take that energy, right? And sort of say the stakes are too damn high. They're just too high. And I've been in Arizona many, many times. I've been in Nevada many times. I've been in Florida many times. The swing state, battle states. Folks, when they say, I'm not going to vote, I feel like they're speaking from this position of extreme privilege, because I've heard the stories of Arpaio like closing down the streets and going in there, snatching people out of their homes. You see the anti-transgender bills happening across the country. If you can navigate the system and, when Trump is there, that means you got a ton of privilege, because at the end of the day, it's working class people of color that are going to be hurt the most by this system. And I get it. The Democrats are not that much better. They're both like, the puppets of capitalism. I get that. But elections are not the end all, y'all. Elections are one point in time where you could say this is organizing that we've done for 2 or 4 years, and it's a reflection of your power. And you get what you win, you get what you're able to build towards, and then you just keep organizing. It's all about organizing. Elections are just one point in time. We got to continue organizing every single day, 1% at a time. But I just think the stakes are just too damn high. We can't allow it to happen.
And why, I mean, just real quick, just throw it in real quick if a couple of y'all want to respond. This is a big debate about are Latinos voting for, if Latinos are more and more voting Republican or more and more going the MAGA route. Do y'all feel that's true, and what's that about?
I don't know. Our young people are abolitionists. They have intersectional analysis. I have so much confidence in our young people. I think during the Trump era, we saw a lot of folks, particularly men, I'm sorry, Latino men, like, I don't know what happened with y'all, but like, it was rough to watch. But our young people have much better analysis. So I don't know that that's completely true. Like, I don't necessarily think that that shift into authoritarianism is going to come from Latino people, but I think it's our responsibility to make sure our elders are not duped by him, and that our parents like get the analysis that we have and are, you know, up to date around voting down ballot too. Like, let's talk about voting down ballot as well. But I think maybe it's a moment in time, but I have hope. I have hope.
I have hope too, 100%. And we're going to see it happen in the 14th when Jurado knocks De Leon out, right? And she gets, let's just say 70%. That still means 30% voted on what I believe are Trumpian values. I just don't want to romanticize. I worry about myself also because I have lots of hope. I really do. But are we doing the work? When white nationalist members, patriarchy is fucking killing us in the Latino community, the Latina community. Because all these motherfuckers, the dude that beat somebody up in Charlottesville, Latino. Proud Boy, Latino. Right? We could go down a list of 6 or 7 Latino men under the age of 30 that is doing this. So I feel hope because when people were protesting the tapes, a lot of raza, a lot of young folks out there. But we got some work to do. We got some work to do to make sure our young people show up. Young people show up to the polls when they're so disconnected from the reality of these politicians. We also got to move I appreciate our fam that came up and talked about familia. We have to have these conversations in familia. We have to be willing to have these conversations at the table because at the end of the day, who can move our family more than ourselves? And those are painful conversations for those of us that are still able to sit at the table with our family members.
I just want to, on that note, as the person who grew up in Florida with a conservative Cuban family, yeah, it's hard. And honestly, I think some people are lost. And at the same time, I do see a lot of change happening in Florida. I don't think Florida is completely lost. I want to shout out, Congressman Maxwell Frost, who is Afro-Cuban. He is the first Gen Z congressman doing great work in Orlando. There are groups like Cubanos Pa'lante in Miami, the Miami Freedom Project. They're really, they're like, the equivalent of Mi Gente, but like in South Florida. And I definitely want to say that it's not a lost cause. I don't like it when people assume that all Cubans are like white MAGA types. I personally don't feel that way. I think that I think the hard part is like engaging with family and also just understanding when your values are just so incredibly far apart that at some point it's like you also have to honor like your own boundaries as a person. But I think that I take a lot of solace in the fact that, okay, like at least the lines are drawn. I'm like, I don't need to, I don't know. Now I'm getting all like emo, but it's like, no, I am getting emo. And I think especially for like women, like we deal with a lot of like, we are on the receiving end of a lot of machismo. I mean, just people across the gender spectrum are victims of machismo, marianismo. Me, I'm the eldest daughter in my immigrant family, was, working since I was 14. And I think it's, we have to keep all these things in mind, but what we're looking at, especially as November approaches, is like all of these issues being amplified through policy. And I think it's like okay to just find your people, even if they're not your family, and work really hard to reflect your values in the work you do with your friends or your chosen family. That's also an option.
Thank you. And on that note, we're gonna close out. We're gonna do this last round. And I'm gonna ask the panelists to do this, but I also want to invite y'all to do this when you leave here and in the coming months. So we're talking about chisme. There is a kind of chisme that's like the shade kind of chisme, or like, not necessarily always cool. The chisme my mom's talking when she calls her sisters. But we want to invite y'all any chisme you have in the sense of like shout outs. Again, finding, like lifting up our people, lifting up ourselves, the good things that we're doing, the things that are worth fighting for. We can't just always be fighting against something. It's what is it for? ¿Qué bueno hay? ¿Qué bueno queda? ¿Qué nos falta hacer? Que nos da algo que makes all of this worth it. And so you can send us your chisme, and that can also be like, yo, I tried this thing to this. I went to this new spot. Está riquísimo. Or look at this person doing dope things. Or this is a spot. Did you know that this happened? Because there's the present, there's what comes in the future, and also remembering our ancestors and the generations that came before us that fought and created the conditions that we're able to fight on today. We can honor them. That's chisme too. So if you got that chisme, send it to us at Con Mi Gente on the socials, or you could also email us, chisme@migente.net. And to close out, I want to invite y'all esteemed panelists to give us your chisme, your shout outs here in Los Angeles as you close out. Whoever wants to start, and will each of you go shout out your chisme to close out.
As the elder, I'll start. I'm about to be 50. So my shout out goes to my family up here on stage that are really carrying the work. LA has a bright future because of the work that they're doing, from La Defensa to the city council to journalism. I mean, this is what gives me hope. It makes me feel like, oh man, how can I spend this latter part of my life supporting our young folks, making this happen, and the folks after y'all. So just much love to y'all. That's one of my shout outs.
I got a couple shout outs. There was an amazing event hosted and organized by Community Coalition where they brought over 100 people to talk about 300 people, over 300 people to South LA to talk about housing instability, what we need to change to keep people housed, and just the power. Like, I truly believe the power is with the people. You know, we won with no special interest group support, but it was all people power. And so seeing that, organizing those photos like that brought me so much joy and like so much hope. And also, we just voted on the LA City budget a few weeks ago now, and we had 3 council members vote no on the budget. A budget that gave nearly 25% to LAPD. You know, no other moment in history have we given the cops more money than we do today, and people still don't feel safe. And so the fact that we have moved the needle where, you know, 1/5 of our entire council voted no against this budget, that gives me hope too. And, you know, next year when we have Isabel, and not next year, this year when we have Isabel, we're going to go even farther. So shout out to everybody volunteering. Shout out to Mi Gente for putting this together, and just excited to be here with y'all.
So La Defensa has a PAC, y'all. It's called the Justice PAC by La Defensa, and it's focused on electing progressive attorneys, public defenders for judge in LA County. And last cycle, we got the first public defender ever elected to the LA County Superior Court ever, Judge Holly Hancock. This year, we are supporting 2 amazing candidates for judgeship. So if you want to find out more about our candidates, about the Justice PAC, we have our team members tabling in the back. Please visit our table to find out more about our Court Watch program, about the Defenders of Justice, and about the Reimagine LA Coalition that we're a part of with COCO, with BLM, and so many other amazing organizations here in LA County working to shift money into the hands of our communities. But vote down the ballot all the way down to judge, and vote for the Defenders of Justice.
I would like to shout out some local news organizations that, could use a lot of love. The first one, these are all run by Latinx, for Latinx, and the first one is Calo News. And the second is the Boyle Heights Beat. I'm learning so much about LA through them, and LA Taco. Thanks to them, I know exactly where to eat in LA without getting ripped off. So please read more. I just want to shout out the people who are still like reading the news. That's why I write it, for the people who read it. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
I'll give 2 shout outs to the 2 groups in the city that I love the most. The first one is Unite Here Local 11, which is where I came out of. I'm a rank and file member who helped build the union. But the workers there, which are led by women housekeepers, just won a $10 wage increase over the life of the contract. And right now, a housekeeper is making $30 an hour with free health care and a pension. And it was led by those badass housekeeping women, for the most part. So give it up for them. And then, and of course, got to give it up to the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. DSA has been organizing for maybe the last, 8 years, 9 years, like really in the city. And DSA lives rent free in all of the people in power. They think everyone is DSA. When someone shows up to protest, they're like, that's a DSA member. When someone comes up, like, that's a DSA member. We are living rent free in the people in power. So I got to get up to both of those groups.
Can I do another one real quick?
Dale.
Frankie Carrillo's running for Assembly District 52. We need him to get him elected, so make sure you volunteer for him. And we introduced a ceasefire resolution at the city council. Hugo seconded that. Thank you.
Órale. All the shout outs. So we're going to close out here. If you want to follow the bus tour, we're hitting Santa Ana next and then Vegas. We're going to be brunching over there in Vegas. I want to do a pool party, but no moda. At the Queen. And then we're getting to the East Coast. We're heading to Brooklyn, Boston, Philly. If you want to find more, you want to catch us on the road, you can find information on mijente.net. Up next, we are going to be joined by the great folks at Cumbiaton, and extra special love to DJ Cecil. And they're going to be spinning hasta que nos saquen a la chingada de aquí. And I'm very excited. Also, we're going to get a performance from Las Angelinas. And so that'll be coming up next. And just lastly, I just want to thank y'all. Honor your work, honor your continued perseverance, your love, your passion for our community, the ways you do it, and the many different talents that you bring. Long distance runners, however far your journey goes, it's just very fitting to kick this off here. So I want to thank you for your time, your effort, and your ongoing work here in Los Angeles and beyond. Thank you so much.
Let's also give it up to Marisa Franco for the amazing work that she does. Give her a round of applause. Se acabó.